Hi, and welcome to webcast number 8 of Ask Maggie. I am Maggie Fuller. I'm a licensed clinical mental health counselor, but as I've mentioned on every webcast, that this is not a substitution for real counseling. If you need real counseling, you do need to meet one-on-one with somebody. This is just to give you an overview, informational, educational, a little entertainment, and it's about social anxiety disorder today. So here's what I want to ask you. What do Donny Osmond, Barbara Streisand, Kim Basinger, football star Ricky Williams, and baseball star Dontrell Williams all have in common? Well, surprise, it's social anxiety disorder. All of them have been diagnosed and treated, and they have openly admitted it so that other people feel that they can get help. It can be pretty debilitating. For example, Donny Osmond had a major attack while he was filming a Broadway show. The Technicolor, Joseph and the Technicolor Coat, could not perform for a while, had to take medication. Barbara Streisand forgot her lines during a performance once, and it freaked her out so much she actually didn't perform again for 30 years. Football star Ricky Williams, people would wonder why he would wear his helmet for interviews, because he was afraid people would see just how nervous he was. So these people were all diagnosed with social anxiety disorder, and we're going to find out a little bit more about it ourselves. One more person is coming out to discuss their social anxiety disorder. It is Mr. Miho, my boyfriend, and he is so afraid that people are going to see how nervous he is that he's wearing a bag over his head. I feel bad for him. And one thing he does to treat it is using alcohol. Not a good idea. Self-medication when you are nervous can lead to bigger problems. But thank you, Mr. Miho, for your help today. We may need your help again. All right, well, let's get a look at this. First of all, social anxiety disorder is the 4th most common mental health disorder in the United States. That is strange. It almost sounds like it could be something going on in our culture. Also, 12% of the general public have had social anxiety disorder at some time in their life. So that's a little better than 1 out of 10 people. And you probably heard people say, oh, he's just a little shy, or she's just an introvert, or, oh, they're kind of weird, they're kind of offish, stuck up, because they don't feel like talking. Well, that's probably an indicator that social anxiety disorder could be going on. Although there are a lot of other diagnoses that it could be if somebody tends to stay away from other people. But let's get focused on this. And how do you know you have social anxiety disorder? First of all, in order to get a diagnosis, you have to see a mental health professional and have them give you the official diagnosis. But I'm going to give you some clues so you can decide if you want to go and see a mental health professional, and let you know what types of therapies or what kind of things they can do to help you. First of all, according to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Health Disorders, that's the DSM, you probably heard of them talking about it. They have the new edition coming out, number 5, blah, 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 yeah. A lot of changes going on, but they're good changes. Well, first of all, there's a significant persistent fear of social or performance situations leading to embarrassment, feelings of rejection, or scrutiny. Number 2, if you have physical symptoms of anxiety like sweating, dry mouth, blushing, shaking, heart palpitations, fear of fainting. And number 3, you know the fear isn't reasonable, but you can't seem to control it. At least you feel you cannot control it. And number 4, it interferes with your everyday events like work, school, or social events. Now, there's 2 types of social anxiety disorder, 2 types. First, there's generalized, which means it happens in almost every situation once you leave the house. And then there's non-generalized, which means it's a particular situation that really brings on the symptoms. So it's really a lot more than just being shy, because it can keep you from getting a better job or succeeding in the one you have, or maybe keeping you from doing as well as you could be doing in school. It's a cause of absenteeism, lower incomes because you work fewer days, less educational success. If you don't show up for school, how are you going to get the grades and the opportunities and the scholarships? And it can keep you from meeting somebody and having a relationship. And isn't that one thing that, even shy people want to hook up with somebody? It can also keep you from having fun at parties and other celebrations and normal events of life because you're too shy to go. And it's kind of like being on the outside looking in. And that's not a good feeling. So, do you think that might be you? Maybe. Well, oftentimes social anxiety is triggered by negative thoughts. That is a very vital part of social anxiety disorder. Everybody tells you about positive thinking. Well, there's things that go on that we don't really hear ourselves say about ourselves, like everyone's staring at me, or they'll think I'm a loser, or I don't belong here, or I won't have anything to say, or maybe people will see just how nervous I am. They go into a social situation and their knees shake, or their hands shake, or their face quivers, and they're afraid people notice that. Well, let me tell you, people are usually too busy to notice all those little tiny subtle cues. So sometimes these negative thoughts are old mental recordings. Where do they come from? Well, they come from your childhood sometimes. Maybe it was the way you were raised. Parents sometimes use shame and guilt or embarrassment to teach, and well, see how well that worked out. Not too good. Maybe fear of abuse is a factor. A lot of times teachers single kids out in school in a bad way, and that can precipitate social anxiety disorder. Maybe you were at a home that openly criticized other people, and then in the back of your mind thinking, well, maybe all other people talk about our family or me that way, because that's what you're used to. Did you just see the kitty in the background? It's Lilu, and by the way, she's back in heat again, so she may be singing. Okay, so we were talking about those little recordings in the back of your head, and there are some negative thought patterns, and sometimes parents model these negative thought patterns themselves because they feel as though they were losers at some point in their life, and you're going to become a loser, or if you keep doing this, you're going to become a ditch digger. Were you bullied by peers? That can also lead to social anxiety disorder. Or maybe it was a teacher. Everybody has their own story to tell. It is important to remember two things. Number one, it's genetic. Number two, it's an accumulation of learning experiences combined. So why do some people get social anxiety disorder and others don't? You hear, oh, everybody gets bullied, stop being a big baby, blah, blah, blah. Well, it does make a big difference with biology because everybody is genetically wired differently. Some people have more reactive nervous systems. You may see people like that, and they're genetically designed to pick up on social cues and environmental cues better than other people. And sometimes this mechanism can be a little too sensitive, and that's a result of learning experience, and things get heightened. Back in the caveman days, we really did need super senses to survive, not so much anymore. So it just kind of hangs around. People with social anxiety disorder really do care about the feelings of other people, which I think is a real positive thing. They're highly attuned to facial and social cues. These are people who genuinely care about other people for the most part. Now, researchers at MIT have identified patterns in brain scans of people with social anxiety disorder, and what they found is that when these people looked at photos of faces, the ones with social anxiety disorder had a higher activation in their visual processing centers than other people. And this made a big difference when they were planning treatment for the people, because if you had that activation in the visual center, you responded better to cognitive behavioral therapy. Also, another part of the brain called the amygdala is more active in people with social anxiety disorder, and that goes back to that old survival mechanism. The amygdala is a big part of the survival part of your brain. So my point is, yes, this is real, and yes, science can detect it. So my Facebook friends who think this is all a bunch of psychobabble, Ace, you know who you are. Well, you know where you could put it. So you find yourself avoiding going out, asking for reassurance, preparing excessively when you have to go out and do something socially, finding ways of creating diversions to draw attention away from yourself. You watch for little signs that people are judging you or they don't like you. You're looking for things that'll confirm that people don't like you or they think that you're a fake. Well, maybe it's time to get some help, and what can we do? Well, what you might want to do is see a therapist. And the reason for this is because social anxiety really can keep you from moving ahead. Think of all the things that you could do if you felt better about yourself and you didn't have these physical symptoms. How about karaoke at the fair, 5 minutes of stand-up at the comedy club? You could be talking to somebody you want to do, okay? Job interviews, think about that. Giving your own opinion when you're in a meeting or in classes. And as you know, in a lot of classes, class participation is a big part of your grade, but if you can't speak up, how are you going to get a good grade? So it is holding you back. How about calling into radio stations to win prizes? Some people, it is just terrifying for them. How about networking at work? Just socializing one-on-one with people. If that is holding you back in your career, maybe you need to do something. So through the years, you've had these uncomfortable emotional and physical signs when you were in social situations. So how does social anxiety develop? Well, once you learn to escape from a situation that gives you these uncomfortable symptoms, you do it more and more. You feel uncomfortable, you escape, you feel better. Wow, there's your answer right there. But it is not really a good answer. You've successfully escaped, but you've become a prisoner of your own thinking, and that's not a good thing. Now, what's happened, it's become even harder for you to go out socially because you know that you can escape the situation. So now what? Well, you get a professional diagnosis and you can see a therapist, and here's what they're going to tell you to do. First of all, they're going to suggest talk therapy. Usually it's cognitive behavioral therapy. It has been researched and evidence-based or proven to be effective for the most part with a large number of people with social anxiety disorder, or they could suggest medication, and the most effective thing is a combination of talk therapy and medication. Now, the medication, let's talk about medication because a lot of people get a little squeamish about that. First of all, there's the serotonin reuptake inhibitors, the SSRIs. I'm sure everybody's heard about those. They are very effective for the most part, but they do have side effects. They can affect your sexual behavior. You know, sometimes you just don't have that same sex drive. Also, the withdrawal symptoms can be very difficult. So if you do go on them, you want to talk to a pharmacist or a doctor about going off of them gradually because the side effects when you go off of them are just kind of nasty. Doctors may prescribe benzodiazepines, such as clonopine or Valium. They are highly addictive. Now, the nice thing is they work really fast. Your heart's racing, you're totally nervous, you pop a pill, a few minutes later, you feel better. Other medications have to build up in your system over time, but they keep it under control in the long term. I feel that going with the benzodiazepines is not a good idea. But I'm not a doctor, right? Okay, there are also the MAOs and the beta blockers. Again, those have side effects and you have to be very careful with them. But you do combine it with talk therapy and you are on your way to feeling better. Now, cognitive behavioral therapy. It is very good and it is fairly effective with a large number of people with social anxiety disorder. Now, cognitive behavioral therapy is brief and time limited, so everybody has their insurance, plus you have jobs and school and children and families and things to do, so it's time limited. Usually 12 to 18 sessions is what it takes to do that. And it trains you to be your own therapist. It trains you to work with your own thought processes and change them so that you can keep social anxiety at bay. Then, cognitive behavioral therapy focuses on the present, so you're not sitting there with Sigmund Freud talking endlessly about your potty training and your childhood. Usually, that type of psychoanalysis takes many, many years to get the effect, and cognitive behavioral therapy is much quicker. And with cognitive behavioral therapy, you're changing your thoughts and beliefs about yourself, and that's what leads to the symptoms. So it's worth trying. Now, I will go into more depth on cognitive behavioral therapy in another session. You have to ask me to do it, though, because there's a lot of different things we can be doing. But if you want to know exactly how it works and the fundamentals of it, I'd be happy to do a webcast on it. Just ask. Message me. You can also join a social anxiety therapy group. You can find one in your neighborhood just by going online. They're there. They're out there. You get a bunch of people together that all share the same symptoms, and you can share your ideas together. And then the therapist can help you deal with it a little bit better. There's something called in-vivo exposure, which is used with a lot of fears and phobias and anxiety. And what you do with that is you enter real-life situations that provoke the anxiety, and you let go of it gradually. It's planned. It's done with the help of a therapist. So, for example, you have a fear of public speaking. You might first start by giving a speech in front of your dog. Then you would do it in front of 2 or 3 relatives, and then you would graduate to a larger group of people, and finally maybe a larger crowd. So you're facing the fear in little increments with the help of a therapist, and it's basically safe and effective, but once again, it's kind of threatening because you're doing something you're afraid of doing. There is also something called interoceptive exposure, and what this is based on is that your actual fear is the physical symptom, the blushing, the sweating, the feeling hot, the shaking. So what they do with interoceptive exposure is they deliberately try to bring those sensations on and make you anxious, and then you become acclimated to the sweating and realize that it's really not going to kill you. So when you have the anxiety, it's almost like a life-threatening response, like that fight or flight response. It's just sweat. It's just blushing. You're going to be okay. You're going to get through it. Finally, there are other things you can do, like journaling and jotting down your thoughts. You become aware of your thoughts, especially the negative ones, and then you challenge the reality of those negative thoughts. Now, let me give you an example of that. Let's say you are giving a speech, or you gave a speech, and you notice 3 people in the audience who are yawning, all right? But you don't even notice the other 997 that are sitting there interested in what you're saying, right? Well, you can train yourself to look for the interested people. And why would you want to look at the bored people anyway? They just have bad manners in general. So that is a brief overview of social anxiety disorder, and if you want to go into more depth on it, I'd be glad to do that in another webcast. I will give you a little bit of wisdom of my experience through life and working in a very public situation at WNIR on the radio, is that most people really are too busy worrying about themselves to be watching you so closely to look for mistakes or physical symptoms. People are more worried about themselves. And people genuinely care and will want to support you if you look anxious. And if they don't, that's kind of a reflection on what kind of person they are, and do you really care what people like that think. Finally, all those singers, actors, and sports figures who have openly admitted to having social anxiety disorder, they came out of the closet on it to help you so that you realize that it is perfectly okay to see a therapist, and that medication sometimes is the way to go. They've openly admitted to it. They're doing fine now. And Donny Osmond, if he can do it, you can do it. I love Donny. All right. Sorry, Mr. Miho. Mr. Miho has a long way to go. He's going to have to deal with his own problems, and I wish him well too. Feel free to talk to me on the internet with Facebook, or you can go to askmaggie@hotmail.com, send me an email, talk about your experience with social anxiety disorder. I noticed in some of the comments that a few of you have had that experience. If you want a referral to a therapist or a group, you can go online and look for somebody in your area, or you can ask me and I can possibly find you a referral. And I will also post a website about social anxiety disorder on my webpage as well. And once again, thank you for watching Ask Maggie, and we'll talk again next week. Thanks.